Hello. What's poppin'?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the 405 Diaries, your go-to podcast for real talk on college and mental health.
We're your big sisters, Preston,
Lily,
Madison,
and Bella.
last episode we talked about finding your purpose in college, even when you are struggling in your mental health, and some doubts about the future and our pathways and dealing with comparison and how that can be very difficult. And we just offered some advice on how to overcome that and how we can seek each other out when we are struggling.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking openly about mental health. We're going to be pulling out of our little diaries some advice and personal anecdotes about breaking the stigma around mental health in college with a special guest, Mindy Windholz.
Woo! Yeah, Mindy.
Unfortunately, due to timing conflicts, I was the only one that was able to get onto the Zoom with her for the interview, but we still had a whole list of questions and everything else that we wanted to ask her, and she gave us a lot of insight on the topic that we'll be talking about today.
So sit back, relax, and give a warm welcome to Mindy Windholz, a mental health specialist here at the University of Oklahoma.
We are joined by Mindy Windholz. She is here to discuss how she kind of got into the field, the importance of breaking the stigma surrounding mental health in college, and how we can kind of support students and guide them through this time in their life. So I know you have a long list of successes and achievements to your name, but can you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and how you got into the field of mental health counseling?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that warm welcome, Bella, and hello to all your listeners and viewers out there. My name is Mindy Windholz. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I have been in the field for over 20 years. Essentially, way back in high school, I kind of knew this was my thing. I was always the person that people went to kind of run their problems by, and was really fascinated with psychology. I took a psychology class my junior year. It really clicked for me. I also had goals and aspirations to be on Broadway. That didn't happen. Because
awesome.
It's really hard work.
Yes.
I'm a classically trained soprano, and I love musical theater. So
Awesome.
come find me for that as well if you ever need anybody. But anyway, all of that to say, really, really, really fell in love with psychology. So went to college, did my 4-year, got my bachelor's, then I did my master's and went to Fort Hays State University up in Hays, Kansas, and then had my very first opportunity to go into private practice in Topeka, Kansas, and was exposed to everybody along the lifeline from children all the way to geriatric. So I've had experience working with folks living with what has been previously known as severe and persistent mental health issues. Things along the lines of schizophrenia, schizophrenic or schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, major depression, some DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, and substance abuse, to name a few. I've also had experience working with couples, marriage counseling. I've gone and worked with a couple of incarcerated populations, gang members, sexual offenders. I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
And then I ended up in college.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You've been everywhere. Like, what have you not
Done
done?
a lot. I've been working, I did private practice for 3 years, and then I went and worked specifically with interpersonal violence and sexual assault care in Topeka at the YWCA. Did that for a couple of years, took a little bit of a break, and then came back when my family and I moved here. We moved from Topeka to St. Louis, lived there for 6 years, and have been in Oklahoma City for 12. And when we came back to Oklahoma City, I found a job at OCU, Oklahoma City University, up there in Midtown in the city. I was there for 11 years. And I was inaugural position of one of their counseling positions there. Did that for 3 years, and then I was promoted to director, and I did that for almost 8 years. So I have been at OU for exactly 1 year. My anniversary September, and I love it down here. I love being part of the Sooner Nation and love working in college mental health. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I fully feel you because we filmed our third podcast episode yesterday. We talked about kind of like, what am I doing here? Like, it was all about like the purpose of like finding yourself in college, kind of like, why am I in this major, and like all this, like all the passions and stuff like that. We were talking about timelines. There's no strict timeline. Like, it's amazing to see your timeline because we were just talking about that yesterday, how like there's no distinct path and there's no right way. It takes some people 2 years to do something that might take other people 10.
Thank
Journey
you.
in your path is inspiring, truly.
Oh, thank you. I think that's really important for people to remember is there's no linear path and there's no, goal of like, okay, now I know I've made it.
Yeah.
Because it's so important to just keep growing and seeing what your opportunities are. And you never know in 10 years what you're going to be interested in. Even if you stick with your major and you stick in this particular field, you don't know what you could end up doing within that
Yes.
field. And it's so exciting to have those opportunities.
Yes, for sure. So what kind of inspired you to work specifically with college students? Because I know that you have worked with everybody and with all different types of situations. So what brought you to the University of Oklahoma and to work with college students now?
Absolutely. So I did my internship and practicum at my university in the college counseling office. And so I had a year and a half of experience with that, and I absolutely loved it. What I really loved about being in this space and working with college students is, again, that enthusiasm and that passion and that point in someone's life, regardless of age, right? Because it could be
Yes.
someone who's a traditionally aged student, non-traditionally aged student, or coming back for a second or third career. It's that
Yes.
passion and that interest. Also, the support is so fantastic. Being in a college counseling setting and just being in college and being able to say, let me call this person to get you what you need. Let me hook you up over here with
Yes.
this organization. It's like the best little small community, for
Yes.
that level of support. And I think it's a really unique experience when it comes to mental health. I think the only thing that comes close to that would be working in community mental health, where you'd have
Mhm.
kind of a case management situation where you come in and you're like, okay, maybe I need transportation, maybe I need grocery money, maybe I need access to meds. And that case manager kind of does that for you. That's the
Yeah.
really cool thing about working in college mental health is making sure and trying to ensure that everyone has their basic needs met
Mhm.
and working on the mental health and then working on the academic piece and referring them to where they need to go.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, I mean, there are several students, not only here at OU, but across the board that are struggling with food insecurity, housing insecurity, unsafe living arrangements, and things like that are still trying to maintain their academic
Yes.
journey and their pursuits. So not to say that we can't help those students as well, but more often than not, usually housing is taken care of, meals are taken care of, and there's a supportive kind of a circle. So to kind of what brought me here was, after about 11 years at OCU, and I worked a lot primarily with performing arts majors. If any of you out there know about OCU, it's a great university and a great school. And I really loved working with that particular population. And, just as it's coming into my life, I thought I would be there forever. Things started to change, and I was like, how can I grow?
Yes.
I felt like I had grown as much as I could in that environment.
Mhm.
And seeing this opportunity, it wouldn't make me a director anymore. And so there is that like that ego thing of like, oh, I will be in charge. What does
Yeah.
that mean? Like, how will the world see me? Will I still be worthy if I take this shift in my identity, right?
Yeah,
As a
taking that like
counselor?
risk.
It was such a big risk, right? It's everything I've known for 11 years. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of the one who sets the tone in the office. I had great coworkers and things, but I was ready. I just felt stagnant. So
Yeah.
I came here, and this is a great crew over here at the UCC. Fantastic people. I have felt myself grow so much in the last year by being around other counselors and really great, kind, generous people over
Yeah.
here. So it's really what I needed career-wise.
Yes.
So I didn't know it, but I came here and that's what that is. So
That's awesome. I always feel like for me, I'm always like, it's everything kind of like happens for a reason. Even though in the moment it might not feel like it, or you're like, this is a risk or it's just like scary, I feel like it always plays out and ends up like working out in the end. Can you share any memorable experiences or challenges from your journey that have kind of shaped the way you approach mental health counseling today?
absolutely. Let me think if I can shape it to be kind of a general answer, but also with some specifics. Essentially, starting off working in private practice when I was 25, 26 years old, like that's looking back on that now, I'm like, that is really intense.
Yeah.
I was in an office with two more seasoned professionals. They were fairly supportive, but a lot of it was, hey, you're kind of on your own. And so learning to trust my own judgment and learning to trust my own decisions and making mistakes, right? I
Yes.
think making mistakes is a great example. I had a supervision with my supervisor, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I think I'm doing the right thing. He's like, you're not doing the right thing. You need to stop and think about that. And that was so humbling to hear, but I felt like we had such a supportive relationship that I could take that directive from him
Yes.
and still feel competent in what I was doing. So I would say really leaning into making choices and being okay with the consequences and the outcomes of those choices. And I feel like that happens all the time in mental health. You might have someone come in and they're talking about a specific situation that maybe you really identify with.
Yes.
And you want to make sure that you're not telling them what you would do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You got to be very careful with that. So I think every day I have the opportunity to challenge myself, work on my boundaries, sit with someone and not try to fix it, right? But just help provide that space for them to kind of figure things out. And I think
Yeah.
that's another thing is like going back and understanding why I entered into this profession in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say something really controversial. I think one of the things that I realized through my own journey is going into this profession with your eyes wide open and being really careful about not making the reason that anyone goes into this profession to help people, right? So controversial statement, but
Uh-huh.
what I mean by that is, yes, you might go into this profession because you're really good at being there for people or offering great advice. But ultimately, the decisions belong to that individual.
Yeah.
And what is it about us that makes us feel like we're helpful? You know, is it we told somebody what to do and they did it? We offered them a directive, or we're saying, do this and you'll feel better. We don't want to do that. So my encouragement is going into this profession because you're good at holding space
Yeah.
and you're compassionate, but you know your boundaries.
Yes. I love
Does
that.
that
That's
make sense?
awesome. Yes, for sure. I think that that's not a hot take. I feel like that, or at least it shouldn't be, because I like fully agree with you. Maybe it is, but I feel that's like such a good way to go about it. Because I also feel like people think that therapy, like that their therapist or counselor or whatever else that they go to seek is like going to like fix them and like fully heal them. And I don't think that people necessarily understand that they have to also put in the work. It's like they need to put in the work for themselves to, continue to grow on their own. So I fully agree with
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. You know, I might offer that as a little piece of advice for anybody listening. If they're struggling with feeling like an imposter or having imposter syndrome in what they're doing,
Yes.
my encouragement is, hey, if you're feeling like an imposter, you're definitely doing the right thing
Yeah.
because you're feeling humbled.
Hmm.
But what we want you to also do is lean into your talents. Hear me out, knowing that you're good at what you do, but
Yeah.
being humble enough to where you can learn and be taught and correct yourself and be comfortable with making those choices and having the consequences, making
Yeah.
those mistakes, right? I think so many people go into a profession, or what I'm really seeing with college students right now is I need to be perfect to get that perfect job. And coming back to your question, things that I've learned about this or examples that I've had to make a lot of really difficult decisions and I've had to learn from those consequences.
Yeah.
I've made mistakes. And that is something that has really helped me to correct myself and lean into the fact that I'm good at what I do, but
Hmm.
I'm not here to tell anybody how to live their lives. I'm
Yes.
not the expert on that.
Yeah.
So making sure that I'm going into it with a sense of like, I'm good at holding space and I'm a good listener and I'm good at reflecting and I'm good at reading. So I might, have attended a conference or read a book or something that's given me some insight on treatment.
Yes.
Those are the things I'm good at, but I'm also humble enough to know that I am not going to solve everyone's problems. They're coming
Yes.
to me because they want this space and I'm good at holding it.
That's awesome. I talked about, I think it was maybe, it was in one of our past episodes, kind of also like the stress of perfectionism and being self-aware too. We've talked about always being self-aware and taking the time to self-reflect about different topics that we've talked about and stuff. So I think that's awesome because it's also like, hey, I am pretty good at these things and these things, but I also know I struggle and lack on this like area.
And I think that there's a lot of talk about narcissism and being a narcissist. And we want to make sure that's not compared to having a healthy ego and a healthy
Hmm.
sense of confidence.
Yes.
Two completely different things. I
Yes.
have worked with people who are identifying as narcissists and probably meet the criteria for narcissism. And I can say that 9 times out of 10, when people come in and say I'm a narcissist, they're not. I think a lot of it is if people are struggling and they're talking about themselves a lot, or they're kind of putting themselves in the center of attention, it looks like narcissism to some folks, but that's really not
Yeah.
what it is.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. It's inspiring to hear how your personal experiences and passion for mental health has led you to where you are today. So now we're going to just dive into talking about breaking the stigma of mental health on college campuses. Can you define what mental health stigma is and why it's particularly challenging for college students?
Absolutely. The mental health stigma is that there's something wrong with you if you're not functioning at 100% all the time. If you
Yes.
have doubts, if you have anxiety, if you're sad, if you have depression, if you are in any way, shape, or form not fitting into what is considered a typical college experience.
Yes.
And, if you're not happy all the time, if you're not involved with everything all the time, if you're not engaged, if you're not enthusiastic, if you're not supportive for your friends, like all of those things, then there's something that's wrong with you. What is it?
Yeah.
And so there's that stigma. And if I may, I would probably trace that back to colonization and a Eurocentric view of overall health. And
Hmm.
there's a lot that we can find out about, the BMI, for example, what the standard of beauty is and what a typical body standard is. The BMI was created in the late 1870s and it was based upon a European male model. We're not all
Oh.
European or male,
Yeah.
but it's based on that. And so when we think about the whole ideology of coming to an already occupied piece of land, claiming it as your own, calling yourselves more civilized than the folks that already live there and occupy that space, and completely destroying and dismantling that culture because there's a superiority complex with your own culture. And then we also think about kind of that ideology of work is the best cure for anything. If you're a hard worker, if you're productive, if you're doing something all day long, that equals morality. And so that also comes in with that mental health stigma of what are you doing to make yourself miserable and why aren't you fixing it? So there's a
Yeah.
lot of shame involved in that. So I hope you didn't mind that little history lesson, but I think we have to
No,
go
that was
back.
amazing. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of stigma too if you bring in organized religion, specifically some
Hmm.
Christianity into that, where it's come in with colonized lands and colonized cultures and folks, and saying, there's sin associated with any kind of, sloth, for instance, one of the seven deadly sins, like don't be lazy because you're
Yes.
sinning. Don't be a problem, don't be a burden, like pull your weight. And there's a lot of ableist ideology behind that as well that brings in stigmas for mental health. And I think overall, kind of that historical organized ideology of if you're not able-bodied, if you aren't sound of mind, body, soul, and spirit, there's something wrong with you. So I
Hmm.
think we really need to move past that because that's a way to try to control folks, right? And I'm not saying that organized religion is inherently bad or a way to control folks. There's a lot of beautiful things about that. There's a lot
Yes.
of supportive pieces of that and elements of that. But there have been examples and times where it has been used inappropriately and has been used to hold other folks down and creates a whole host of issues moving in through the generations. So just want to bring that to voice as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I think the stigma comes from. And that's what I think it is like, if you're struggling, fix it. Don't talk about it, move on. And we got to
Yeah.
get past that.
Yeah, for sure. I fully agree. I think it's such a issue within college students because also they feel like they need to fix it on their own and internalize it and just not allow themselves to be vulnerable when in reality it is okay to not be okay, but it also is okay to seek help when needed. The next question was just what are some misconceptions college students have about mental health?
Yeah. So a lot of it is like, this is supposed to be the best time of your life. You're
Yes.
supposed to be the happiest. This is where you're going to find your lifelong friends and you're going to ace all your classes and everybody is going to be so supportive and loving and I mean, so fun. And then your expectations are not met. It's that one time of like, okay, I rushed. I didn't get the house that I wanted or I wasn't chosen at all. Like that's so hard. Or I
Yes.
really thought I loved my classes. I hate them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the people here. I feel really lost. I feel really alone. And so it's that whole thing of like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
rejection from wherever I go.
Yeah.
And so that's a big misconception. I think, first of all, is that this is the best time of your life. And I think people have such high, unrealistic expectations for what their experience is going to be that it takes their mental health. Now, I'm
Yes.
not saying that it can't be amazing because it
Yeah.
sure can be. It can be oh so fantastic. But I think it's about coming in and again, like readjusting those expectations and saying, like, just let me experience this. Let me be in my environment, let me be in my surroundings and figure out what works for me.
Yes.
And if this doesn't turn out the way that I want, it doesn't mean I'm failing. And it doesn't mean that the environment is failing me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just maybe this doesn't fit. That's a huge misconception is that this is going to be fantastic. And the other one is like, I never need mental health support. That's for everybody else.
Yeah.
And there might be a lot of reasons why folks don't come in, and they might just ignore that or they might try to overcompensate. But I think there is that misconception of it's for other people, it's not for me.
Yeah.
Or it needs to get really, really bad before I get any kind of help
Mm-hmm.
because it's embarrassing. And embarrassment comes along with that stigma. And
Yeah.
especially if you're from a culture or an identity that does not welcome sharing these kind of things with people you don't know or
Mm-hmm.
talking about this outside of your group.
Yeah.
Also, just kind of a lot of embarrassment of being like, I don't want anybody to see me going over here. They're going to think something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that I've heard.
Yeah. Perfect. So now we can go into mental health in college life. So what mental health challenges are unique to college students and how does this impact their well-being?
Sure. I think definitely it's that adjustment from college to being away from home for the first time, even if we're talking about students that have grown up in the OKC Metro or in Norman,
Mm-hmm.
you're still kind of out of the house. Or if you're living at home, it's kind of adjusting to what does this mean? Am I adult? Do I make my own decisions? Do I make my own doctor's appointments? Like, do I go to the
Yeah.
store? What does all this mean? So it's kind of that big shift. If you've had an environment where you've been fairly supported, and I would say have a typical high school experience where maybe you had some organizations, clubs, sports, whatever, and we're supported in that, and then are kind of leaving that comfortable environment to come to somewhere new, especially somewhere big like OU. It's just like, wow, this is a lot. Getting
Yes.
yourself up to go to class, doing your homework, maintaining a schedule, and for those that are working, having a job, things like that.
Yes.
So, that's a lot with that traditionally aged student kind of an experience, I think. If you're a non-traditional student, and especially maybe those coming for their first degree and they're a little bit older, it's kind of balancing maybe that work-life issue of like, maybe I have a family, maybe I am working full time and I'm coming back to school and it's a lot. Or maybe if I'm older, I don't really feel like I connect with the students in my class because they're so much younger than me. So it's kind of that, what am I doing here? Did I make a mistake?
Yeah.
Or if you are coming back for your second or third kind of a, career change, it's that confidence. It's finding that confidence. Am I doing the right thing? Or I haven't studied in a few years and studying is hard. So it's just overall, I think the entire adjustment to a new schedule, new routine, and new expectations.
For sure. I agree. I think college is kind of going back on what you touched on earlier, is just kind of like there's all these high expectations. Not only are you shifting to a whole new environment of college and that life, it's also like the shift of becoming an adult and like living on your own. So it's like such a weird transition.
It really is. And it's just kind of like also there's that added pressure of do I do what everybody says I should do as a college student? Do I party? Do I
Yeah.
experiment? Like, what's my love life like? Like, who am
Yes.
I? Like, there's a lot of pressure that goes into that as well. That social aspect is huge.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to trying to like get decent grades and
Yes.
maintain some kind of a semblance of who I am. So I think to your point, it's really easy to get lost.
Yeah.
You might have an idea who you are in high school, but that might shift once you get here
Yes.
because you're so busy. It's
Yeah.
like, I never thought I would have to go buy cleaning supplies or new bed sheets. And how do I do that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
what size is my mattress? Like, how do I get my car serviced? Like, it's all those things.
Yes. How does the pressure to succeed academically and socially contribute to mental health struggles?
Looking at the economy right now, and we have a presidential election coming up that's bringing up a lot of anxiety for folks. It's kind of that idea of maybe I won't get a job, even if I've got a bachelor's degree. And if I have a great internship, is the economy going to be good enough for me to have a job? There's so many job openings, but no one's hiring. And so it's kind of that fear of, am I going to be good enough? And my answer is yes, you're going to get a job. It might be a minute. And that's okay, and I think so many people have they've been internalized to believe that if they work hard enough, they're going to get exactly what they want. And that unfortunately is a fairy tale because you can only access what's available to you. And so if you're like, I'm working really, really hard and I want this job and nobody's hiring right now, that's not your fault. And it's not a failure. It's just how things are. So again, it's about adjusting those expectations and saying, I have done a really good job. I have really good skills. Where else can I build upon those? Where might my skills and my interests fit right now if I'm not able to work doing exactly what I want? My encouragement is just keep going. Just keep check things out, see what else you're interested in until that other opportunity comes up, and just keep learning.
What are some common signs that a student might be struggling with their mental health, but they're not seeking help?
Sure, absolutely. One of the first things is probably indicating are they becoming more isolated? Are they pulling back from their family and friends, their support groups? Are they not attending class? Are they not getting their homework turned in? Are they showering, not showering? Is there anything changing with their eating and their diet, their sleep? Those kind of things. And professors are usually some of the first people to be able to notice that, besides roommates, because they would see the students fairly often and regularly. So those are typically some of the signs. Also, maybe just some verbal cues. I'm not happy. I'm really struggling. And some of the big ones, of course, are talking about suicide, things like that, having some of those thoughts. And I will say, trigger warning, but having thoughts of suicide or not wanting to be here is very typical during this point in life, being a college student, because there's so many things coming at you all at once. They want your attention. You might feel just completely overwhelmed. So I just want everyone to know out there, it's normal, typical to have those kind of thoughts. All right. But it's the idea that I want to act on them, or I have a plan to act on them. That would probably indicate receiving some assistance or a little bit of support. But I do want to let the folks out there know it's normal to have those thoughts. And typical.
I feel like the issue is that the burnout with students is not only just in education, but I think it goes to burnout and doing everything, taking care of themselves, and just kind of being so exhausted to the point where they don't want to keep going anymore. Going back to talking about professors noticing, what ways do you think that professors and faculty and staff can kind of guide students that in a way that doesn't intrude, but they're noticing? How do you think they should help them, whether that be reaching out to them personally or maybe, I don't know, anonymously, suggesting them? How does that process go? What is advice of that? How should faculty and staff play into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it certainly depends on the relationship that they have with the students. If it's a fairly close relationship in terms of this is somebody that I see because I have a lot of classes in my major and I've got a pretty good professional relationship with them, I think it would be more than appropriate for that professor or faculty member or even a staff member, if they were, seeing them frequently, to say, hey, is everything okay? I've noticed that you just aren't quite yourself. I'm just checking in. And then just kind of listing hey, we do have support here at the university. Here's some of those things. I'm available if you need to talk or if you want some help in accessing those things. If it's someone that's, maybe a gen ed professor and they're, in one of their classes and they're kind of I'm not really sure, but I am noticing some things. I still think it would be all right to just mention, hey, so you've been missing class. Is there anything that I can do to help? And maybe sending out a reminder of some of the supportive, groups that we have here on campus and some options that students could have to receive a level of support. So I don't think it's ever a bad idea to reach out and let people know that they're missed, especially here because it is so big. And it doesn't have to be scary and it doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be invasive. It's just hey, I've noticed. But I've had a lot of experience in suicide prevention. I used to do what's called QPR training, question, persuade, and refer, for faculty, staff, and resident advisors that would talk with them about how to talk with people about suicide and prevention and things like that. So I feel feel like the best way is the most direct way, but you can do it in a very kind and respectful way as
Yeah,
well.
I fully agree. People also don't want to reach out to their professors either, just because, like, also going with the stigma, keeping it to themselves. But I think that's awesome advice for faculty and staff as well, for them to not be afraid either to like reach out. And even if it's something more generalized, just like, hey, are you doing okay? Like, I know college is a lot, just something more generalized too can be very helpful.
And that brings up another thing that I think really affects students' mental health is the expectations of others, whether that's family members, friends, people in their support system, or professors, feeling
Hmm.
like I'm going to let everybody down if I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
And my encouragement is please, please, please contact your professors. Please do that. And 9 times out of 10, again, they're going to understand, they're going to be supportive, and they're not going to be mad. And
Yeah.
they don't have any expectations for you that are going to be completely destroyed if you're struggling. Because one of the things I think we do is we create these stories in our head, right? We try to predict how things go, and
Yeah.
it's usually the worst case scenario, and then we feel terrible, and then we're scared to reach out. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it doesn't turn out that way.
It never hurts to try.
But my undergrad GPA was 2.88 because, as I like to say it, I did a lot more research, going out and watching people in their natural habitat of the bars, going
Yeah.
out to the club, having a good time. But I still managed to graduate and I got a master's degree, and I did really well with my master's degree. I had a 4.0. It's fine. It's fine. Don't ask me about it.
Amazing.
But anyway, I just want to share that because I think oftentimes, again, going back to those expectations,
Hmm.
if I didn't have a good support system from the professors that I worked with, I probably wouldn't have gotten as far as what I did. And then also knowing, like, I know scholarships are a thing, financial aid is a thing. And so I know that there is a certain GPA that some folks have to keep up.
Hmm.
But also knowing, like, you don't have to do this all on your own. And you don't
Yes.
have to have a perfect 4.0 to get a job or to have the career that you
Yeah.
enjoy.
And I especially feel like here at OU, all the faculty and staff and professors, especially from my own experience, have been amazing. I've had such a good experience, and everyone has just always been so supportive. And it's so nice to have that support system. I do feel like the staff and the faculty here have exemplified being here for the students.
Absolutely. I think there's just a lot of intentionality. They want students to do well, and they chose this field for a reason.
How can we start breaking down the stigma of mental health on college campuses?
In the last 10 years, colleges and universities as a whole have done a really great job of being more promotive with their
Yes.
supportive services. The thing that I think is really important is if there is a mental health program that you're able to go to, if there's a club on campus that's bringing in a presenter, go and learn. Some people have had a really bad experience with mental health care. Maybe had an experience in counseling that didn't feel good, or maybe they did it when they were younger and a child and they didn't have the autonomy to say, I don't want to do this. Remembering you have a voice. You have
Yes.
a voice and you can use that, and you can provide, feedback to your counselor or to whomever it is that's presenting. Just like share your thoughts and your opinions. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to hide this.
Obviously, we have roommates and your friend groups, and obviously we're surrounded by people all the time in classes. So what are just some ways that you can be supportive to others?
So the first thing I would recommend is clarifying communication and saying, I want to talk with you, and here is my intention. And we don't
Hmm.
speak like that, right? Like, but when it comes to the mental health piece, it might be helpful to say, I'm just wanting to vent,
Hmm.
or I'm wanting some advice or some guidance. Because I think what happens is sometimes people feel really obligated to solve those problems, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, and they might feel ill-equipped, or they're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to help my
Yeah.
friend, but I'm a good listener. So
Hmm.
maybe, having that kind of a conversation of, hey, if we ever need to talk about mental health, is it okay if I just share with you what I'm looking for? Maybe I'm just
Hmm.
wanting to vent, or I'm really struggling. And are you available? Can you be there for me? Be
Yeah.
like, yeah, if I understand what it is that I'm needing to do, I can do that all day long. So I know
Hmm.
that sounds kind of clinical, and I know that sounds kind of like, not very organic, and oh, that sounds
Yeah.
really uncomfortable. But if you're in a friendship where this has happened and you really don't know how to support your friend, so you kind of ignore it and back off,
Yeah.
it might help to just be like, I know this is a weird dynamic, and let me just like point out, I'm not really sure how to help, but if you tell me, then maybe I can help.
Yeah.
So again, kind of setting your expectations of like, I'm not expecting a solution, but I would love a space to just be able to process. So I think it's just kind of sharing that space, acknowledging what each other is bringing into that space,
Yes.
being supportive, and, being patient. and if it gets to a point where you're like, yeah, we don't even have to like set those boundaries and parameters anymore. We just know what the other one needs after a while. But I think a lot of people get caught up because they're like, I didn't sign up for this. I'm your
Yeah.
friend. I did not sign up for this. Then resentment builds, then the friendship can suffer from that. So I'm just going to be like, hey, just clarify what it is that you're looking for.
I think it's important to be honest and vulnerable and open, setting your boundaries like from the beginning. So now we're kind of at the resources and support part. So what are the mental health resources that are available here at the University of Oklahoma for students to use?
Absolutely. So we have a couple here in our office here at the UCC. So we offer personal individual counseling for faculty, staff, and students, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And you get 12 sessions per semester. So it's from August to August. So you have a whole year, 12 sessions in there. We usually see people about 3 to 4 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
In those sessions, kind of talking out, making a plan. What is it that you're needing? They're $10 a session. If you have the student healthcare plan, it's free. Otherwise, it's $10, which isn't a bad price at all if you kind of think about what else you'd be paying out there in the wild.
Oh, yes, for sure.
You can charge it to the bursar if that's okay. If that feels like, no, I don't want anybody to know. You can talk with the front desk about other payment options as well. So we do offer that. In addition to those sessions, we have crisis sessions available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That means that if you're struggling, and it doesn't have to be an emergency, right?
Mm-hmm.
People think crisis is emergency. It can be, I'm really struggling and I need to talk to somebody, or nobody's available and I need to get out of my head, or this thing happened and I just need to process. Come on in. There's a crisis counselor on call all during those hours. So please come and find us. No appointment needed. You can walk in. You can ask to speak on the phone, or we can even do a Zoom as long as you're here in Oklahoma. And we have 2 psychiatrists here on staff that can provide assistance with medication and prescription. If you're coming in with a diagnosis of attention deficit disorder and maybe you're on stimulant or medication for that, we just ask that you bring in your previous paperwork with your diagnoses and provide that to the front desk, provide that to the psychiatrist, and they can assist you with that as well. So we have that as an option. They also have prescribers downstairs at Goddard as well. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, we can offer that to you. And then we also have a really cool thing called TELUS. I don't know if anyone out there is familiar, or if you're familiar with that, but it is on our website, UCC at OU. Just Google it. You can find it. It says TELUS, TELUS. It's a really great resource. All you have to do is just download the little QR code, and that is 24/7, 365 free counseling in your pocket, day or night, whenever you need to talk to somebody. Primarily solution-focused therapy. So if you're going through something specific and you're like, I just need some help, some interventions for this, or even if you are having a bit of a crisis or you really need to talk to somebody, they're a fantastic resource. So you just download it. They'll connect you with somebody. You do meet with them over the phone. Some people are like, I don't like the virtual, but this is a great option and it's free. It's also available in all 50 states. So if you're not from Oklahoma and you're using TELUS, you can use it anywhere in America. Also, 170 countries you can use it in. So if you are from abroad or you're studying abroad, you can still use it. And it's in 70 different languages as well. So it's a pretty great resource.
That is awesome. I was not aware of that. Thank you for informing me and everyone else about that doesn't know about that, because that is amazing. Can you share any success stories of students overcoming the stigma to get the help that they need?
Absolutely. I feel like everybody that walks in our door is someone who's overcoming that stigma.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's anybody that makes the call and shows up for the appointment is breaking that stigma. And so, I can't think of anything specific, but I will just say anytime anybody comes in and sits in the chair, that's the hardest part is just getting here. I feel like it's a success. And then when they start referring people to the office, that's a success.
That's awesome. I love to hear that.
Be gracious with yourself, be graceful with yourself, forgive yourself, and just, be present, be mindful, be in the moment.
Yeah.
So my first thing that I'd love to recommend for folks to do is take care of their inner child. And so if you're tired, if you're grumpy, if you're sleepy, if you're hungry, take care of yourself, right? So if you're struggling a little bit, ask yourself, have I had enough water to drink today? Am I hydrated? Have I eaten today? Did I sleep okay? And did I play today? Coming back to kind of those four dynamics of when you were younger, those are the things that kids want to do, so those still apply today. So coming back and saying, if my mood is low, if I'm feeling like I'm struggling, if I don't feel connected, are my basic needs getting met, right? And then coming back and saying, this is my journey, and really coming back to, am I comparing what I think I should be doing to other people's journeys? That can really take away a lot of joy, a lot of curiosity, a lot of confidence. And so coming back and asking yourself, how much of this is about a comparison? And how much of this is about, I'm not trusting my own decisions and I'm really struggling with that? And coming back and remembering, what are the choices that I've made? What are the things I feel good about? Where do I receive my support? And just coming back for that reassurance, and knowing that you are definitely worth being here. You got an invitation to the party, show up.
Yeah.
Have a good time.
Yeah.
And if you need to talk to somebody, come and find us.
Yes.
So those are the things I'd kind of like folks to remember. They're worth the trouble. I use the word trouble because a lot of folks feel like they're burdens. You're not. You're worth the time. You're worth the attention. You're worth the grace. You're worth the forgiveness.
Yes. For sure. How can we, as podcast hosts, help spread awareness and encourage open conversations about mental health?
Just keep talking about it, keep normalizing it. You had some really amazing and thoughtful questions today, really well thought out. And I think just by your enthusiasm for it and your inclusion for it, bringing that and keeping that at the forefront of what you're doing and the message that you're spreading is really important. Sharing your own personal experiences, really empowering as well. And just normalizing, like, everybody has it. Like, we all carry a bunch of stuff with us. And if we can learn to set it aside and not let it define us, but also not have shame about walking with it, we're all going to be a little bit better off. So just keep talking about it.
Yeah.
And challenging the idea of what you're supposed to be and normalizing into whatever your individual journey is.
Yes, we have all, like, when we're talking about certain things, like, we all have different viewpoints. Obviously, I've had different paths, different journeys. And it's so funny because every time we are talking, we all have different experiences, different views and all this stuff. And we're always like, it's so weird how we all deal with things differently. I feel like we can really cater to a lot of different people because it's not like we have one view. And I love that our platform is inclusive to all because we do invite everybody in to listen and hear us. We definitely are all passionate about it. And it's been good. We have loved filming our episodes and everything and getting to talk about it. And so it is an honor to be able to spread awareness and have those conversations about mental health that usually maybe people don't even hear about or even have time to think about, get to sit down and truly self-reflect and think about these things.
No, I appreciate you doing this. This was so much fun. And thank you for letting me come onto your show today, for trusting me with this space. It is because of people like you that the world is going to change. So I thank you so much for that. All right, take care.
We want to thank Mindy again for giving us the opportunity to speak with her and talk about such an important topic.
So we also, talking about mental health and the stigma, breaking the stigma and things like that, we always have resources in our bio for you. So whether you're an OU student or just need help in general, you can find the link to our YouTube and our Spotify, listen to our episodes.
Subscribe, follow, hit that notification button, comment, share our podcast with your friends, maybe not your friends, maybe strangers,
family,
anyone. We just want to remind you guys that this is a safe space. Obviously, we're a mental health focused podcast, especially walking through college. So you are welcome into our community in the 405 Diaries, obviously.
Thank y'all for watching, and we'll keep in touch. Bye.
Bye.
Love y'all.